Greetings and welcome to another edition of Learn with FERM, where we've been testing the limits of audio and musical intelligence in large language models, particularly when it comes to analyzing the audio file itself. Today we're going to learn whether Gemini is any good at composition and production choices when presented with an arrangement. I've added a new feature into my app, the one I used in the last two videos, to demonstrate this capability, which allows for plug-and-play melodies generated by Gemini to be dropped directly into Pro Tools, or any DAW for that matter. Hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. Now if you want to get right to the results, I have everything time-stamped chapters in the timeline, so you can skip ahead if you want, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what I'm trying to do here and introduce the experiment. So when most people think of AI and music, they think AI music, like Suno and Udio and these generation type apps. I am more interested in large language models and whether they can ultimately act as a professional second digital ear of sorts for the music we create to help guide us in the right direction when we hit a roadblock, especially for those of us who are not as experienced and don't have anyone around that can give us a professional perspective. And everyone's had the moment of, you're an artist mixing your own song, or you're a producer, I love this part but I can't get it to sound right, and you tried everything you can think of. Well, maybe AI can think of the missing puzzle piece for you, and if that's true, it is incredibly valuable. So today we're going to be treating Gemini as a creative director, a composer, a producer, whatever you want to call it, and see if it can give contextually appropriate instruction for building upon the arrangement in Pro Tools in this instance, starting with a very basic foundation. In the last two videos, we proved that Gemini is at least capable of analyzing a mix and successfully identifying issues to be fixed and then how to fix those issues. And even then, we're still in the early stages. It will get better inevitably, but it can only go so far into the audio in the state that it's in. Gemini, at least, large language models. There's different kinds of, AI music neural networks, but as far as something that can give you language back and tell you things, information directly with words, this is the best we've got so far. So we know it can give technical information with regard to a mix, but can it provide actual musical intuition from the audio file it's given? For this experiment, I've set up a bare bones Pro Tools session that consists of a drum beat and a synth chord sample. Now, before I continue, I want to emphasize that the goal in practice is not to use AI every step of the way in the creative music production mixing process. Ideally, as I mentioned earlier, we want to be able to use it in times of frustration and in moments of writer's block and you have no one else to turn to. But for the purpose of this video and experiment, we got to see how far we can take it. So let's get into the Pro Tools session. All right, so here we have my foundation of an arrangement, 16 bars, a repetition of two 8-bar sections to kind of form a hook or a verse maybe. So I have addictive drums track here. I made a sort of down-tempo kit, and I also customized it quite a bit to be very ambient, really wet snare, you'll hear it. And then we have a sample from Splice, kind of lo-fi synth chord loop in the key of A minor. Now, as you can see, I have a track labeled bass with no MIDI data on it. I have a massive synth instrument ready to go to play MIDI data for the bass, but that's where Gemini is going to come in. So we're going to send this to Gemini. Let me play it for you now as it is, drums and synth chord loop. And then it repeats another 8 bars. I might want to balance these out a little more and maybe mix the drums a little more, but for the purpose of this video, we got the foundation. Now we're going to bounce this and send it to Gemini, and we'll go into the app now. So you may recognize this from the other videos if you've seen them. If not, it is a fairly basic React front-end app with fast API running to call Gemini and generate a spectrogram and some other cool things that I'm about to show you now that I've introduced producer mode. So before we were just doing engineer consultations, as we call them, where we upload the file and the spectrogram and we ask for improvements in the mix, which we proved last time that Gemini was very effective at identifying the problem that I created for it to identify, and it was pretty much spot on. Now we have producer mode, which is a different system prompt that tells it you are a professional music producer / composer, or what, I forgot exactly what it is, but basically says help complete the arrangement, suggest melody, you know, all of these things that you would do as a producer or as a songwriter or as a composer. So I've loaded up the WAV file that I bounced of what you just heard. LLM MIDI test 1 is the name of the file. I can play it right in here just to confirm that is indeed what we just heard. We're going to select full, of course, as already is. We have a selector here just in case if you upload a full song, you can select a specific part for it to inspect. We've got, of course, Gemini 3 Pro. We're going to use balance. This is the temperature setting. How strict do you want it to be? How close do you want it to follow the rules of prediction? Or do you want it to do some really outlandish stuff? We're going to be balanced. We can test the unusual later on. Thinking, keep it medium. And we're going to now type in the prompt. Now, for this, we're specifically looking first for a bass line. For this video, I think I'll do one more instrument after the bass line. We'll see how everything goes. Okay, so here's the prompt. Listen to this arrangement and suggest a bass line to go along with it. It's a down-tempo electronic track. Now, I've included the chord progression because when I tested it earlier, when I needed to know if it was going to work, it was able to detect the key signature, but it couldn't quite get the chord progression right. So when it suggested the melody of the bass line, it was a little shaky. And what I'm trying to do here is get it to be plug and play, so we can just drag this right into Pro Tools. Now, ideally, I could include options like here to say, you know, define the chord progression and then select the amount of beats, the time signature, and the amount of beats in each chord without having to type it manually in here. But for now, this is what I'm doing. The chord progression in 4/4 time is A minor 7, 2 beats, F 2 beats, C 4 beats, A minor 7, 2 beats, F 2 beats, D minor 7, 4 beats. Once it knows that, then here's the song. It feels the textures, it sees the frequencies and the spectrogram, all that. It should be able to give us a decent bass line that will sound good in this context. Let's go ahead and send it on off. Alright, the results are in. It took about 60-90 seconds, in case you were wondering. We've got the spectrogram. Obviously, a lot of high end left to be filled in because there's only the drums and the synth chord pad chord loop. This is the message from Gemini, the producer. Based on the audio analysis and the spectrogram, you have a solid foundation for a down-tempo chill hop track. The spectrogram shows a healthy amount of mid-range energy, likely your keys pads, yes, and clear transient spikes indicating the drum groove, but there is a distinct pocket in the low frequencies waiting to be filled. Again, I did not indicate any instruments that are in here. I just said listen to the arrangement and suggest a bass line and gave it the chord progression. Here's a production plan to expand this arrangement, followed by the specific MIDI data for the bass line you requested. Analysis and arrangement strategy, the vibe. The track feels atmospheric and reflective. The chord progression, as I gave it to it, is classic and emotional. The goal is to ground this harmony without overpowering the chill aesthetic. The bassline strategy. For downtempo, less is more. Yes. We don't want a busy funk line, we want a melodic anchor. Tone, use a warm analog style synth bass, think Moog or Juno emulation, or a sampled upright bass. Focus on the root notes to establish the chord changes, but use syncopation, playing off the beat, to lock in with the kick drum. I will add passing notes at the end of the longer bars, the C and the D minor 7, to lead smoothly back into the start of the loop. Suggested layers and textures. So it's suggesting extra instruments, which I didn't really ask it to. I said just bass line, but that's nice. That's what we're going to do next. The glitch element. To modernize the downtempo feel, take a small snippet of your drum loop, pitch it up an octave, crush it with a bit crusher, and use it as a fill at the end of every 4th or 8th bar. That sounds like a fantastic idea. The bassline composition. Here is the specific line I've written for you. It anchors the roots but adds a melodic walk down to make the transition between chords feel sophisticated. Bar 1, A minor through F, root A sustain, drop to root F on beat 3. Bar 2, root C, low with a walk lookup, fill B to C at the end, A minor 7, root A, drop the rib, bar 4, D minor 7, root D with a melodic fill, leading back to the A to start a loop. Alright, right on. Mixing tip. Ensure your bass is a mono setting enabled below 120 Hz to keep the mix tight. Cut a small EQ notch in the bass around 60 to 80 Hz if that's where your kick drum fundamental hits. MIDI data. Here is the JSON MIDI data. For the suggested bassline, I have set to the tempo to 84 beats per minute. Not 84 beats per minute, it is 70. Here's the thing. We have a MIDI file to download. MIDI is not concerned with tempo. It is all relative and it will fit to the grid of my DAW, in this case Pro Tools. Here's where the magic has happened. When we send the system prompt to Gemini in the API call along with my prompt here, we say if the user asks for a melody line, use explicit MIDI information in a structured output. In this case, JavaScript object notation. And so instead of just spitting out that object that would just be annoying to look at on a user end, the app itself parses it out and changes it into a download button to download the file using a Python tool called MIDO, M-I-D-O. And the same way we use Python to extract the spectrogram, but that's a different tool. There's another Python tool that can assemble MIDI files. So what I'm saying is Gemini is not generating a MIDI file and packaging it and sending it in the response. It's sending a text output in a structured form, JSON, and when the app sees that after it gets the response, it detects it and wraps it in a button to download it. Here we go. We're downloading it, and here is the magic. So we just got this file from Gemini through the app, parsed out into a MIDI file. We can go right into Pro Tools, take this MIDI file that Gemini has dictated, and drag it right in. Boom. We got a bass line. Now let's inspect it here to make sure the notes are correct. A, F, a drop down to E, passing note to C for 2 beats. Back up, what is this? B, C, down to A, F, D for 4 beats. And then it climbs up F, G, G sharp. Oh, so we're getting a little harmonic minor action in here. I don't know if that's going to work with this progression as a bass line, but let's hear what it sounds like. Now, the timing, like I said, because it's MIDI, it didn't know the exact BPM, but it doesn't matter because it's in ticks, and it's just divided by the grid as determined by the DAW, which is set to 70 BPM here. Also like to note that it has given a variation in the velocities of each of the MIDI notes, so it's not just robotic, the same thing. And one more thing before we play it, for some reason, it likes to give the 0 notes, A0, F0. These are too low. I mean, this is like, listen to this note. It's just it's so sub bass. It's not, we want it to be normal bass notes. So I'm going to go ahead and transpose this up by an octave. Boom. Now that sounds better. When I update this again, what I'll do is in the system prompt, I will say, do not include notes below a C1 or whatever. C1 is pretty much, I mean, you can go lower. Some like super EDM things do that, but, and other stuff. But for this case, we don't want those super low notes. All right, let's play it. The bass line that Gemini wrote and the app packaged into MIDI that we dragged directly into Pro Tools. Let's hear it. Okay, I do like that climb up to the G sharp. Now I do have it a little quiet, so maybe I want to turn it up to emphasize how actually effective that was. Put it up to 10, minus 10. Also, I believe one of those passing notes doesn't sound right. Yeah, that we want to do more like, yeah. All right, so we'll copy that and paste it there so we can go for 8 bars. Let's hear it again. That's pretty damn cool. I'm kind of impressed here. Now, I would vary this a little bit because, again, it doesn't know the exact... I mean, there's so many different things you could do with this massive synth command center, and a lot of it alters the way the note onsets behave and the attack and the release, like all these different things. So Gemini doesn't know how the MIDI notes are going to be synthesized into sound, but the more context we can give it, the better. For now, we're just testing its basic musical reasoning capabilities. But I really like this bass line. I wouldn't have thought to do the harmonic minor 7th G sharp climb up, but it works as that passing note for a bass line, especially when it's not appearing in the other harmonic parts of the track. Although there's only one other, which is the synth chord loop here. Very cool. Now, before I move on to the next instrument, I want to quickly try again and ask it for a variation with the temperature raised on the request. We'll see how different it's going to be. Let's just go with creative. Let's not unusual. When you take it that high, it usually starts doing absurd things, which is fun, but I'm more interested in what it's going to do in the creative realm, as labeled here. So I just said, I like that bass line, but give me one more variation so that it knows that I like the direction it's going in, but I want a variation, and it's going to get the context of the conversation that it's been having with me, and with the increased temperature, it should be able to give us a nice variation. Let's see what happens. Here we go. Here's another variation that takes a different approach. While the first bass line was about sustain and melody, this variation focuses on rhythm and space. This style is more characteristic of trip hop or lo-fi, where the bass interacts more heavily with the kick drum groove. Syncopated pulse. Instead of long held notes, we're going to use shorter, punchier notes with more silence in between. Okay, call and response. Hell yeah, I'm down with it. We will hit the root note on the 1, the downbeat to ground the chord, and then play syncopated notes on the offbeats, specifically the 16th notes before beats 3 and 4. Harmonic interest. I've included octave jumps. This is cool because in the synth that I set it up in massive, I made sure there was that a little bit of that glide, so those octave jumps should make the glide go off a bit. Playing the low note on the high version is right. Yeah, I know what an octave is. And fifths. This adds vertical movement without changing the chord structure. Sound suggestion: use an FM bass. Yeah, all right, we already have the sound, but it's good to know that it's suggesting the types of sound. The pattern breakdown hits the low. Okay, we'll see. We don't need to read its description. We'll see what it is from the MIDI file. Download. Okay, we have this new file. There it is. Oh, okay, that's right. We have to transpose it again because it's doing the 0 notes, which we don't want it to do because that's what they sound like. There we go. All right, so let's see how this section sounds. Okay. Ooh, I like that. Do. I like that end. Let's see how they play out back to back so that it evolves into the more creative version. But first, I I'm going to turn up the glide a little bit more, slightly. We don't want it to be too glidey. And then I want to turn the release up a little bit because I want to have a little more of that tail after the notes end. All right, let's listen to the whole thing back to back. First 8 bars are the original bass line it wrote. Second 8 bars are the more creative version. Let's hear it. hell yeah. This is great. My instinct is to kind of tweak a couple of the notes, or at least play around with it, but for the sake of the experiment, we're going to keep it exactly as Gemini wrote it, although I did edit slightly the first iteration, but that was just one duration of one of the notes. So great, we got the bass line. Now, I don't want this video to be too long, so we're just going to do one more instrument. I'm going to add a synth lead of some sort, because obviously a guitar would be great in here, electric guitar, and we could pull a sample. I don't like doing MIDI guitar because I have guitars and I can play them, but I'm not prepared to record that right now. So I'm going to ask it for a synth lead, and I'm going to ask it to suggest the texture and the type of synth sound that we'll use. Since we have chords, although there's a bit of a lead direction within the chord loop, I'm looking more for a lead synth. So we're going to go back into the producer session, ask great, exclamation point. I like to be optimistic to, to tell it, I like what you're doing, keep it up types of vibes. It understands. Now, give me a lead synth melody and suggest the texture and style of this synth. Real simple. Let's just see what it gives us, what it says. We'll pop it in there, see what it sounds like, and then we'll put a wrap on this video for now. Lots of things we can keep doing. All right, here we go. Here's a lead synth melody designed to float on top of your arrangement. A nostalgic lead. For this down-tempo track, a sharp, aggressive EDM lead will sound out of place. We want something that sounds lived in and emotive. Instrument choice. Use a soft sawtooth or triangle wave patch. Glide portamento. I used that on the bass already. Turn this up slightly around 1500 milliseconds. This causes the pitch to slide smoothly between notes, giving it a yearning vocal quality. Use a low pass filter and close it down slightly so the sound isn't too bright or harsh. Add tape saturation and a long haul reverb. Push melody back, vibrato. The melody is built on phrasing and breath. It doesn't play constantly. It leaves space for the chords to breathe. I like that. Oh, that's right. I left it in creative mode. I meant to put it back to balance, but hey, we're being creative. Starts on the high E, the 5th of the A minor, and cascades down to the G, the 5th of the C. This is a descending, relaxing motion. It climbs back up in bar 3, but then resolves melancholically in bar 4 over the D minor 7, landing on the C, and I hate to resolve the loop. This is what I'm talking about when I say musical intuition and intelligence. This is how a composer thinks and speaks. And here we go. The MIDI file, bada bing, bada boom, we download it. Now, because I don't want to sit here and design a synth based on the instruction it gave me, it's a whole thing, and to be honest, I'm not the biggest synth sound design experienced person. I usually just use presets and then tweak them from there, and that's a shortcoming of mine. But for that matter, what I'm going to do now is ask another follow-up and say, hold on, we go into Pro Tools, I'm going to create a new instrument track, synth lead. Okay, and then I'm thinking we do hybrid. Hybrid has a lot of cool synth presets. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to drag the MIDI in here, but I'm going to ask Gemini, hopefully it knows what the hybrid plugin is. Hybrid 3 by Air. First, let me download the MIDI file. All right, so I said, what is a preset in the instrument plugin Hybrid 3 by Air that would best resemble the sound you're describing? So it should know what that is. It should have that in its knowledge base from being trained on all the things talked about on the internet about producing and synth stuff, and hopefully it will give us a solid answer. We'll find out either way. Here we go. For the specific nostalgic drifting sound described, the best starting point in Air Hybrid 3 is found in the soft leads category. I recommend the preset Creamy Lead. Presets 404 lead, soft, creamy lead. Oh my god. So it's being very specific. I believe it knows what it's talking about. Let's see. 4. Well, 4 is dance pads. Okay. Oh, soft leads. Okay. So it doesn't know exactly what it's talking about, but I'm sure creamy is in there somewhere. Okay. So there's dirt cream lead. Why this preset? This preset is built on stacked soft tooth waves that have been heavily filtered. Is it? Is dirt cream lead built on soft tooth? Yep, it is. It is. I believe this is what it's talking about. It's just not getting the name exactly right. We're just going to play the MIDI file with the dirt cream lead, which should be what it's talking about. All right, here's the MIDI file that it gave us. Boom. Let's see what it sounds like first by itself. Okay, I'm digging that. I'm going to turn the bass down a little bit because I turned it up for the sake of hearing the bass line more prominently. Here we go. Okay, so that's a good melody. The Dirt Cream lead sucks for this situation. It's not great. I'm just gonna choose another one. Okay, so I was just going through a bunch and I realized, oh my god, there's so many to go through. I could probably pick a better one, but for now, this one sounds pretty cool with the arrangement, I think. Pump a Log. And again, this is MIDI generated by Gemini. The file was compiled through the app, but Gemini wrote this melody line and the bass line. Let's hear it all together. The synth could definitely be improved, but this is better than the Dirt Cream lead, as far as I'm concerned. Alright, so that's gonna have to do it for this session for this episode. Thank you so much for watching and sticking around to the end at this point especially. Please hit the like button if you haven't already. Leave a comment with your concerns or comments or ideas, whatever. As always, there's so much improvement to be made, but the steps we're taking, the fact that it can give us MIDI data, we can immediately transform it and drag it right into Pro Tools and actually be melodically salient within the context. I mean, this is amazing stuff. This is the beginning of a beautiful co-producer AI relationship, potentially. No, actually, definitely. It will eventually come to that. I don't know how many years or months it'll take, but we're on our way. Gemini is very musically intelligent, and imagine not having to write a program to extract the MIDI and imagine just using Gemini in the regular app and just typing in, give me a MIDI or look at this Pro Tools session. That's where it's going. So I'm here to learn with you as we go how it's doing along the way. We'll come back to this. Maybe I'll continue to finish it. Maybe I'll add some things. Whatever the next episode entails, it will happen. Peace and love. See you in the next one.